Hello, everyone, and welcome to Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and once again, I'll be in the driver's seat for today's show as we learn how to stop chasing paychecks and how to start closing customers for life. And the way that we do that is by interviewing some of the smartest, best people in all their fields to figure out how they got success, how they did it, how they got there, how they built the business that they have. We have a great show. Without further ado, let me introduce to you our fantastic guest, Mr. Ian McCoog. Ian, how are you?
Hi, Josh. How's it going? Nice to be here.
It's great to have you, Ian. So, Ian, why don't you start off by telling everybody what it is you do?
Okay. So I'm a professor at a medical school in Pennsylvania. And one of the things that I teach is leadership. So I don't have a background in medicine, which I thought was kind of weird when I first came into this job. But, what I do have is, quite a few years understanding leadership theory. Also, I was a teacher before, so I have some experience in the humanities. So couple all those things together, and the medical school thought, hey, we should definitely take a chance on this guy.
We need this
So
guy.
I work with medical students to help them understand the importance of teamwork and leading a team.
That's interesting. My brother actually is works at a nursing school with no medical experience whatsoever. He's a philosopher and he teaches applied ethics. So they don't just have medicine people in medicine schools. Yeah, it's a thing. So
Yep,
medical
you need
schools.
us all.
It's a little bit of everything, as it turns out. So what got you started doing that, Ian?
Well, I mean, the project that we're talking about kind of was a confluence of all of those things. I had, I earned my doctorate. Wasn't exactly sure where I was going to go with it. My degree is in educational leadership and higher education administration, so it was kind of wide open as to where I was going to fit into the fold. Um, and that's really where I could kind of put everything together. So I do have a book coming out. We're going to talk about it's Leadership Bites. It's an approachable handbook for emerging leaders that talks about leadership theory. So it kind of starts at the beginning of leadership theory in the 1880s and makes its way up through behaviorism, which is more of a psychology term, and then works its way into modern day where we're talking about building relationships and how organizations succeed based upon that. But what makes this book different from pretty much anything else you're going to pick up on leadership is that it's done through short stories. So I present a theory, I give you a little graphic that kind of explains that theory, and then there's a short story after it that I feel are pretty relatable or interesting, or just make you think a little bit differently about something that would be a pretty dry concept unless you were picking up a nonfiction book to say, oh yeah, I want to know all there is to know about leadership theory. I feel like this kind of ties it together in a way that's very approachable and something that everybody can benefit from.
Nice. What do you like best about what you do?
Um, I mean, really, I think this is the tried and true answer that every professor says, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's true. I really do like working with our students and seeing their growth. They come to us with bachelor's degrees, some master's degrees, some with a ton of clinical experience, some with no clinical experience, and just a real passion for medicine and a really intelligent mind. Um, and we kind of piece all that together when working with them. So I'd mentioned before, I teach leadership. I don't have a medical background. It really is to me three things to build a good doctor. And first part obviously is the scientific knowledge. You need to know, anatomy, physiology. You need to know pharmacology. You need to know how drugs interact with one another. All of that stuff is, irreplaceable when it comes to training a physician. But we also think about what good physicians have we seen over the years, and they're generally people who have good bedside manner. That's a whole other aspect.
That's a
Some
completely different skill set. Yeah.
Yeah, some people it comes naturally, other people it doesn't, and that's an area where they need to focus. And then really, my job, I view it as all the other stuff. So we do have a number of people who focus on medical humanities on faculty with us. And my part of that just happens to be leadership and team building.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So I love the idea that you're using short stories to take and bring these ideas home. I'm such a big fan of using stories. I think that that narrative way of telling things, or at least using analogy and story, just so much more clearly helps to land the plane in someone else's mind that you're trying to fly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and that's why I took that approach with this book. I've been doing a lot of creative writing, and I wasn't exactly sure what to do with it. And ultimately, I took a narrative-based medicine course through the University of Toronto, and they kind of helped me take those creative ideas and build them into something that could be used for a general interest nonfiction or a narrative nonfiction book, which really is the product of all of this. I've been telling people it's like Malcolm Gladwell if you were me instead of Malcolm Gladwell, because I'm obviously not Malcolm Gladwell.
Gotcha. What in your makeup do you think makes you good at this? What in your makeup makes you the person to write this book?
Well, I think it's that commitment to storytelling. As you had said, Josh, that's how we really relate to people. Um, One phrase that I use when I speak to audiences about this work oftentimes is we are our stories. There is no separating us from our stories. Our stories are us. We are our stories. And a great personal example that I have in the book, actually, in the introduction. I was 17 years old and on a college visit, and I was looking to do a degree in history, which is actually what my bachelor's is in, history and philosophy. And the professor said, well, what is it about history that intrigues you? And I said, it's like that scene in Old School where Will Ferrell just starts rattling off everything and he sounds like a genius. And for some reason, it just kind of clicked in my head. And I talked about how history is a story, and we tell that story from beginning to end, and we interpret that story in certain ways. Uh, and that's really, a passion I've had since I was a kid, like that. And it's really followed me through my professional career. And as I said, I wasn't always exactly sure what to do with it. I was a teacher for a long time. I was a school administrator. I went back and got my doctorate, landed at the medical school, and ultimately putting it all together, we got a book such as this.
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you a question. I mean, in leadership, in business, in life, there are successes, and so making sure to celebrate the successes is. There's been a lot written on that, and a lot of talking about that. Managing teams, managing other people. I want to ask a little bit more personal, a little bit more specific question. How do you manage yourself when things don't work out? How do you manage yourself when there's unmet expectations, when there are disappointments? What do you do to move forward from there?
Yeah, that's a great question, Josh. And a big part of that, we always hear self care, and there are so many different forms of self care, and it looks different to everybody else. And I completely, understand that, and I completely advocate for that. And at times, I think we have to view our setbacks. We can view our setbacks one of two ways. They could be something that completely derails us professionally, personally. We can catastrophize and say, I'm never gonna be better from this. This is never going to do anything. Or we can learn from those. Another great example from the book. I just happened to be watching TV. I had it on the background while I was reading one section, and it was when the Milwaukee Bucks had been knocked out of the playoffs. I think it was 2 years ago. They were the top seed, and the Heat were the eighth seed. And somebody asked Giannis Antetokounmpo, was this season a failure? And he said, no, it's not a failure, because I learned lessons. We go out, we try, we learn, and then we do it again next year. We try to achieve that goal. And if we don't achieve the goal, we've learned things that don't work, so we can apply things that do work. Um, and again, in a great, like Malcolm Gladwell kind of way, I was like, man, that's great. I'm going to write about that. And then I went back and I did some of the research, and I found all of these quotes. I never lose, I learn is the one that I used in the book, and that's by Nelson Mandela. So it was like, okay, I got Giannis Antetokounmpo and Nelson Mandela on this theory of learning instead of losing. This is the perfect short story to put together.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that I've in my thinking about this, because I run into this a lot dealing with folks that are self-employed, working in real estate. Um, I move very much away from the self-care side of things. I think there's just so much content on that to the self-management side
Mhm.
of things. We have all these fantastic commentaries and ideas about how to manage other people, but treating ourselves like a good boss would is something that doesn't seem to be part of the public psyche. There's just like this double standard of how we treat everyone else and how we're going to treat ourselves. And highly productive people often they're incredibly hard on themselves. And folks that don't get a lot done, they tend to be, well, you'll do it tomorrow, and you know that diet's going to be fantastic next Monday.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think growing in that area is just a really huge part of where management come from, because it's very difficult to be an effective manager of other people if you can't manage yourself. People do it all the time, um, but you can be so much better if you can get yourself managed simultaneously with that. And I think that's a big piece of it that I think winds up getting skipped in this whole conversation a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Daniel Goleman did a lot of work with emotional intelligence, and one of the main things that he talks about is self management, self regulation, and how important that is. That it's almost like you always hear the adage, "You can't love others until you love yourself." From Goleman's perspective, you can't manage others until you can manage yourself, until you have those expectations, because he talks about a thing called resonant leadership, and in that what you put out permeates throughout the entire organization. The vibes that you put out are the vibes that your people are going to pick up on. And if those vibes are dissonant, they're still going to resonate, but they're going to resonate in a negative way.
That's
That's not going to help your organization.
yeah. So, in this vast toolbox that you've cobbled together of management styles and management ideas, what is one tool, just to kind of give our listeners a taste of your work? What is a tool you'd suggest to our listeners?
Well, like I said, it does follow kind of the continuum of what people have thought were good ways to lead organizations. And, some of the old ones aren't very good. I mean, you go back to the 1880s, you have people who are using pseudoscience to try to identify like certain traits or certain personalities. They're not great. But we see as things kind of move forward into kind of a behaviorism perspective, we're looking at certain behaviors. How do people react to certain behaviors? How can you use those behaviors to move an organization in a positive direction? And you're asking me to pick one. The one that comes to mind the most. There's what's called the contingency model by Fred Fiedler. That was actually in the 1970s, and his work is the basis for a lot of ones that come later. In that he says your best reaction is the best reaction to the circumstances that are put in front of you. So from a competitive perspective, I got to deal with this conflict. I got to find out how that I'm going to be the best, how that I'm going to get ahead. But also from like that personal internal, aspect, you don't know what's coming from day to day. The best thing you can do is be primed and ready to go and react appropriately to that situation. And the book in the book, the story that goes with that, I really like it. It's about 10,000 meters runner, and she's at the Rio Olympics. No, she's not going to win because the other girls are like super crazy. The girl that won, they knew was going to set the world record. She knew she was going to fall behind, but instead of trying to chase that woman that was very clearly going to win and potentially set a world record, she ran her race to the best of her ability, and she broke her nation's best record. It's another great book. It's Lexi Pappas. I'll plug her. It's called Bravey. Really inspiring story that sometimes we think we have to be the best, we have to be the best, we have to be the best, when in actuality, we don't have to be the best. We have to be the best that we can be for people around us.
Absolutely. I mean, we all have limitations, and just turning in the best you can with what you got. I mean, the problem really is that is a line that is my best is probably the most misused statement most people make, because what they call their best is far from their best. It's just the best with the limited amount that they're willing to put out. And And I'm saying this to you because I'm actually just read a chapter in my book talking about getting rid of excuses. I do a book study with my mastermind group, and so I have to review, and I forget, like you write the book, but you write it like I know what I wrote, but
Yep.
I listen to it again because
Right.
it's an audiobook, and so I as well, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, you're right. I mean, because how many times? Well, I did my best,
Hmm.
and it wasn't. I mean, you're talking about now somebody who actually did the best they could, and you know what that looks like because I think that most people, a lot of times, just look for an excuse that's good enough that others will accept. They won't face ridicule or shame for, well, you tried your best. Um, the weather was bad. I understand why you couldn't make it, kind of thing. Um, and there seems to be a lot of that. I mean, there's the self deception component of this that kind of gets in the way. And I think that's we have to have a sort of our sit down with ourselves about this and kind of squeeze that out, so that we know when we're, how do you know when you're really had enough and when you can go a little bit further? Well, my history with myself tells me that when I tell myself I've had enough, it's often far from the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to you have to test your own reality and
Yeah.
decide what that reality is. And I think that's the point that you're making.
Your,
Um,
your limits, perhaps.
right. Absolutely.
I mean, I learned this years ago, bodybuilding, you do abs, and there's a moment where you're sure you can't do one more. And somebody says, give me five more, and you do five more.
Mhm.
And you don't know how that's physically possible because you were absolutely certain that there was no more. Um, and and how deep does that well really go, kind of thing? Because when you're striving for excellence, you're striving for what you just said. How do you get out of yourself 100% of what you're capable of so you can see it? Because I mean that's really the crazy thing. There's all this quality of ourselves, all of our best we haven't yet seen for most of us. Very few people can sit there and say, you know what, I've seen my best, I know what it is, I've gone to the edge and I know there's no more. um, and I'm sure I'm guilty of that as well. I mean, it's uh,
Hmm.
it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to really
Absolutely.
measure out.
Yeah, we all are.
Yeah,
Human nature.
a little bit. So let me ask you this: what would you say is the most important thing you've learned in the process of doing your research, of writing the book, and of all that you've learned in management? What would you say is the most important thing you've learned?
Well, I think it's a very simple truth, but it's definitely a truth. Uh, that we grow as people, personally, professionally, and you can't take that next step until you're absolutely ready. And I've noticed that myself professionally, and in writing this book, really kind of tied that notion back for me. Um, when I was young, I wanted to do everything, and I was ready to go, and I just couldn't understand why people would, close the door. Um, I'm smart. I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of ambition. I realized I kind of had to learn those lessons along the way before I
Hmm.
was ready to step into a leadership role.
Sure.
And then even, in fulfilling that leadership role is different sometimes than thinking about it. I'm very different at work than I am when I write. I think
Hmm.
that my writing can really help people who are, executives, whether it be a business or a hospital or a school that are managing hundreds and thousands of people. But on my journey of self discovery, I kind of realized, like, academics is kind of where I want to be. I,
Hmm.
I don't want to be a CEO of a company. I don't want to be the guy making those big decisions, but I'll certainly help somebody who does, through using my unique skill set. So,
Hmm.
we grow, things evolve, and ultimately, you can't do things that you're meant to do until you're ready to do
Yeah, that makes sense.
them.
What would you say you're most proud of in your professional life?
Hmm.
Oh, by the way, this is totally the section where we like find out about you, so the people can know more about the guy that wrote the book.
Okay, absolutely. It would be really easy for me to hold up the book again and say, well, here's this book I wrote. I'm absolutely most proud of this. But honestly, the things that that I'm most proud of are when I'm at the grocery store and I run into a former student.
Hmm.
Um, I'm at the gym, I run into a former student, and they say, "Hey, this is where I am. This is what I'm doing." I haven't had it happen yet that where I run to the hospital, and my doctor's a former student, but I'm sure that's going to happen at some point. Um,
I don't
that
know
is
about
what
that one. What did I give him on his final?
yeah, gotta make sure. Is this what were his grades like before he takes up my appendix? Let me make sure about this. Um, but yeah, it's that notion of lifting others. That really is what fills my cup. Um, there are a lot of people I work with who are smarter than I am, who are going to do amazing things in their life that I can never even imagine to do. And to kind of help them on their journey and to see how much they appreciate that is something that, really gives me fulfillment. And then conversely, to receive that back, they look at what I do and they say, man, I can never do that. Like, I don't understand how you relate to people so well. I don't know how you take these complex concepts and whittle them down into things that people not only understand but enjoy reading about. And we all have different superpowers. That's what it is.
Yep.
uh, and to help people find theirs and to get them on to the next stage of their life and the next stage of their training and give them something that's going to be fulfilling, there's nothing like it.
I hear that, man. What one piece of advice would you give our listeners?
Hmm. It's similar to the question I answered before, so now I got to think of something else. So your editor will have to cut a little part out of this. Okay, one piece of advice I would give to your listeners is find something that is meaningful for you and do it.
Okay.
As hard as it is, as much time as it's going to take, something that you're passionate about is what's going to drive you professionally and drive you personally. 3 years ago, I started writing because it was just something that I liked to do. And when it turned into a passion, I mean, man, I caught the bug. Whether it was creative writing, whether it was researching this project, whether it was just like writing for fun and doing stuff on the side. Um, I I wouldn't have found that passion if I hadn't said, you know what, this might be a little different than what I do day to day, might be a little different from what I get paid to do, but this is something I'm really into.
All right. Um, what one book would you recommend? Obviously, go ahead and tell us about your book. What's the title again?
Okay. My book is Leadership Bites, an approachable handbook for emerging leaders. I'll tell you where to get it when we're getting done here at the end.
No, go ahead.
Uh,
Tell our people where to get it.
oh, absolutely. You can get it at any of the major book retailers. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. Um, my publisher is Rootstock Publishing, amazing independent publisher in Vermont. You can get it on their website. And actually, any local bookstore, support your local bookstores. There is a magical database that they can get you a copy of the book that it's in.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So, Faye, what book would you recommend? That was totally to give you time to buy you time to answer that question.
Does that have to be fiction or nonfiction?
Your choice, sir. Your book. What one book would you recommend?
Okay, I got one. So that's actually a pretty hard question for me. I read a lot of fiction. There's usually 3 novels at my bedstand because I feel like I read so much nonfiction during the day and for my work that I try to unplug and read novels
Candy
for
for
the
the
most
brain.
part. Absolutely, yeah. Takes you to a different place, and it's
Absolutely.
wonderful. So I'm going to give you a nonfiction book that's a little bit outside of the box, a little bit mainstream, but I'm going to explain to you why. Uh, that book is Who Moved My Cheese.
Okay.
I mean, it's a little thin book, but it is so useful when we think about organizations. And I think part of it is because when Spencer Johnson wrote it, he didn't think that it was going to be used for those purposes. But that little book about people running around a maze and mice running around a maze and finding cheese um, can teach you a lot of lessons about running an organization, but it's also become so ubiquitous, and that's why I'm making it my recommendation.
Okay.
In my book, we tell a story about what would you do if you weren't afraid. and that phrase rang with me, and I thought, man, where have I seen that? I'm sure I've seen it on like an inspirational poster or something like that, but completely like out of context and in a different um, arena than we would normally think about it. It's in Who Moved My Cheese.
Favorite movie of all time?
Ooh, tough one. Favorite movie of all time, Secret Window. Johnny Depp, very under the radar, great film based on a Stephen King story. Again, I'm a short story guy at heart. It's a Stephen King short story, made it into a great movie with Johnny Depp.
Famous person in history you'd want to sit down and meet?
Okay. Again, remember, my first degree was in history. There is a famous Revolutionary War inventor named David Bushnell. I did my undergrad thesis on his work. He built a submarine in 1774 that was basically a barrel that was lit with like naturally glowing moss, and it actually worked. So I have no idea what the sky would be like. It's probably a total crackpot. But the living or dead question, when people say that, I always go outside the box and go David Bushnell with the dead guy.
Okay. Famous person from your past you'd want to sit down with, not famous person from your past you'd want to sit down with and have lunch with today if you could.
I think on an emotional kind of answer to that question would be my dad. My dad passed away 7 years ago, and it was really when things were kind of taking off for me. And I always knew how proud he was of the work that I did. He didn't always understand it. My dad was a carpenter. He used to say, like, I don't know what comes out of your mouth, like half of the time.
I have no idea what the hell you're doing, but I'm glad you're doing it. I got you.
So to really see how my career has taken off over the past 7 years, the things that I've accomplished, not only because I know he would be proud, but just to sit down and kind of get like that solidified, like, yeah, I appreciate all the things you did for me when I was a kid. And I know you didn't understand it. I know you would rather like teach me how to swing a hammer and go make me replace roofs, but he knew that wasn't my path.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. What one piece of advice would you go back and give a younger version of you?
Okay, let me think. I guess a real simple one is just keep going. When times get tough, just keep going. It's almost like you'd said before. When you're working out, that the bar is on your chest and you just know you can't get it up, but you can get it up one more time. Then you can get it up two more times. Life is going to knock you down, and you have to keep getting back up. And I think that would be an important piece of advice, to give not just myself, but any young person, because you think you have it all figured out. You think your parents are idiots. You think your boss is an idiot. You think you know what it's going to take to get where you need to go, and ultimately you have no idea.
Yeah.
And when life knocks you down, you just have to keep getting back up.
Agreed. If you had to pick somebody to be stuck in a foxhole with taking fire, who would you choose?
Somebody who could shoot better than me, that's for sure.
Okay. What do you do to unwind, Ian?
Well, like I said before, I read a lot, but it's always a novel, some kind of fiction, something like that. And honestly, also writing a lot of fiction. Those are two things that I really like to do. Otherwise, I mean, I'm just chasing my kids around. I have a 7-year-old who will be 8 here pretty soon. We just got about 3 inches of snow last night, and I mean, his eyes were barely open, and he was like, "We go out and sled ride." So we're managing little kids, older kids. My wife is a great partner and helped me out with all these things. But
That's awesome.
really, that's what I do to unwind. I just turn off my computer, I unplug work. I don't look at my email on my phone. I just enjoy my kids, read, watch sports. I don't know when this is going to be on. I'm a big Notre Dame fan. They're playing for a national championship tonight. Um, you know, just whatever it takes to relax.
Good stuff. Last question for you. Where can people find Julian?
Sure. Easiest place is my website. It's just my name, ianmccoog.com. I fill that in pretty routinely. You can pre-order the book there now. Book releases on January 28th, so may even be released by the time that this is published. I keep up all of the speaking engagements and that kind of stuff that I'm doing will be on that website as well. And with me, I guess you kind of get a little bit of both. If you're an academic and you want to come learn about leadership, you might see that I'm speaking at a university at a conference someday and have to pay a couple bucks, or you can come to my launch parties at a bar. I try to hit as many local bookstores as I can, so a little bit for everybody there. But yeah, my website ianmccoog.com. You can get the book. You can see where I'm at, and I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Awesome. Well, Ian, thank you so much for your time and for being on with us and for telling us about your book and sharing some of your views on all of this stuff. It was greatly appreciated. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And I want to thank all of our listeners for spending their time with you. As I always remind you guys, there's never a good excuse